Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's our very first video. I'm Jacob Penrod, but most people online call me Ink. You can call me whatever you want as long as you're staying around here with me. But yeah, today we're going to be doing the first of 3 videos. I'm going to be talking about why I tossed my very first novel. A little bit about me. I'm an author. I feel weird saying author still. I don't know if anyone else relates to that. That's going to be a recurring theme here. I'm still figuring everything out. So I hope you're figuring it out with me. I didn't want to be one of those brand new authors that's writing videos or making videos like the best way to do a character arc when they haven't published a video or haven't published a book. And I haven't published a book. I've written over 700,000 words while I'm trying to learn all of this. So I have a bit of experience. I've worked on 6 book projects and I've finished several of them, the full length novel, as we're going to talk about. Right now, I just finished my most recent novel, The Seven Rangers. I finished the first draft of it, and I'm trying to let it sit, let it bake a bit before I edit it. That's one of my hardest periods because I'm so passionate about it. I want to just keep going. So I finished that, and I'm working on the sequel right now. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about, I think I'm calling the new one The Fall of Skyhaven, not talking about The Seven Rangers. None of that. We're talking about my very first book, Rangers of Skyhaven. So, Rangers of Skyhaven started off as an inspiration or inspired by a Dungeons and Dragons campaign my brother ran, where there was this island called Skyhaven. It was falling from the sky. We had to figure out what was going on. And yeah, there were lots of fun characters we had in it. It was a whole lot of fun. So when NaNoWriMo came along, National Write a Novel Month, and my wife wanted to participate, I figured I would join in. I've always liked writing, and I thought, why not turn this into a full book? So the first NaNoWriMo, I didn't actually write anything. I spent the whole month world building and coming up with a magic system and a language and all these other things that you really don't need before you start writing, in my opinion. Like, that doesn't affect plot and characters too much. I mean, it's nice to have. It's probably better to have. Anyway, I got all that figured out the first NaNoWriMo. Spent probably November to February figuring that all out. And then didn't touch it again until next November. And that's when I decided I was going to write. And oh gosh, it was so bad. So bad, because it was the very first thing I ever wrote. I remember I sat down in front of my computer and I spent an hour trying to write, and I got 50 words. Right now I average 3,000 to 4,000 words per hour because I don't let myself hit the backspace key and I just go very fast. But then I couldn't get 50 words. I was so in my own head, I couldn't get out of it. So that's what most of that month was, is trying to break that wall of not wanting to write crap. Because that's something I found you have to be okay with as a writer, is you have to be okay to write crap on your first draft. Because if you don't take the crap, you're going to get authorally constipated, I guess. You're not going to get anything out. This is a gross metaphor. Anyway, that was my second NaNoWriMo. Didn't touch it again until the next year. And then finally, I thought, you know what? I want to get this done. So many people say they want to write a book and they never get around to it. I'm gonna do this time. And so I did. I wrote every single day. I got 50,000 words, and I was not done. I was not even close to being done. I didn't have a real outline. So I don't know. I just didn't know where I was going. So I figured I'm just going to keep talking, and I'll hopefully figure it out along the way. And that's exactly what I did. And before I knew it, I was 175,000 words into it and finally done. So yeah, that was the initial concept and writing process for it. I got to a point where I would just sit down and write, not let myself stop. Didn't have an outline, didn't have anything like that. I would just let it all flow, and it ended up not. It's not even that it's a bad book. It's just perfectly mediocre. I don't know. It's my first book, and it reads like a first book. I'm going to put it in the description, actually, so you can read it if you want the whole thing, because I'm not going to do anything with it. But yeah, I was really proud of it as I wrote it, and I guess I'm still proud of it looking back for what it was. It had a lot of issues that I was going to be okay with. And it wasn't just 175,000 words either that I ended up throwing out, spoiler alert, but I also wrote a 25,000 word novella that was a direct sequel to it. And both of those had to go out the window, unfortunately. So that's 200,000 words. And that's not counting the first draft of this book, which was also about 175,000 words. So 375,000 words in the trash. And oh gosh, that sucks. Like it still sucks just saying it, even though I'm happy I did it. So yeah, let's get into the concept. Before I tell you why I tossed it, let's get on the same page about what this book was. There is an island called Skyhaven. It's floating miles into the air, and eventually it falls, like a couple of feet, nothing drastic. But like islands don't tend to do that when they float in the sky, as you should know from your experience with floating islands. They like to stay where they are. So naturally, people freaked out. They're like, okay, crap, what's going on? Because at the same time as the fall, there was an attack from a massive flaming wolf on the city. Burned down like a quarter of the city. It was real bad. Lots of people died. And so they're like, this is not good. I like it when there's not giant flaming wolves. I like it when our home is not falling out of the sky. What are we going to do? Now, enter one of our two main characters, Erica. She is Erica Brynndaughter. She was this ex-ranger who was exiled for 5 years, finally shows up again after not being seen. She was presumed dead. The entire Ranger Corps, who was like this force dedicated to fighting off monsters, had been totally wiped out. They thought Erica was gone too. She shows up, fights off this big old wolf, and everyone's like, okay, sweet, we have someone to help us. Next day, the leader of the city, the Alm Speaker, he calls the entire city together. He's like, look, here's what's happening. We're reforming the Ranger Corps. If you're interested, it's going to pay a buttload of money every month, and we need you. You're someone we need. But we can't pay everyone, so we're going to go through a 3-month, I called it moons, which is a period of 40 days. I'm dropping that in later books, just going with months, because, yeah. But you have 3 moons, 120 days to make the cut, get on the Ranger team, and then come help us. Now, if your thought process is going, wait, there's urgent monster attacks, the island is falling out of the sky, how are you taking 120 days to narrow down this force? Which, by the way, wouldn't you want a huge force, not just like a group of 7, which, spoilers, is what it narrows down to, 7. You are right. It was not a good premise. Like, I did with it what I could, but, like, fundamentally, that doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, why are they going to cut themselves short? Why aren't they having a draft? Why aren't they forcing people to enlist? All valid questions that just were fundamentally off with the book, if that makes sense. And then there is an issue with that promise that I told you, which still, I think that's a solid promise, like plot promise. There's a giant wolf attack, the island is falling, what's going to happen? Issue is, I like writing character moments, I like writing dialogue, I like writing conversations, I like writing relationship building, and I did not have a plot to reel myself in. So we start with this fast-paced wolf attack, island falling, recruitment, go off to camp, and then all of a sudden they're at the camp, and it turns into a slice of life relationship drama, which isn't bad, but it's not what the book is. Brandon Sanderson in his YouTube lectures talks about the concept of promises and payoffs. In order to have solid pacing, you want to set up these promises of what your book is going to be, and then on the other side, you want to be able to pay those off. I had a promise for a high-stakes, action-packed book where rangers are going after monsters, which I don't pay off until a little bit in the 3rd act of the book. And outside of that, it's really just like a slice-of-life, slow-burn novel while they're at this recruitment camp. There's a relationship building between Soren, our main character, who he's the only person on the island who can't weave, which is the magic system. He's the singular person without magic. So I thought it would be an interesting underdog story. Soren has a relationship budding with Erica and with a mute woman named Ingrid. Not like a romantic relationship, just a friendship relationship, as well as several others. And it sucks because I love these characters. I think they're so cool. I want to be able to use them. And spoiler alert, I did use them a little bit in future projects. But I don't know. I was really far in the process. I had done 5 drafts start to finish. I had done beta readers. I've worked with a professional editor on it. And I still just had this sinking feeling in my gut. This is not working, which, I mean, I could just release a bit of a stinker as a first book, happens all the time. But the issue is it's part of a greater series I'm wanting to kick off that has multiple entries, and this would be the entry point. And so it needs to be solid. It was not that, and I couldn't see the extent to which it was not that until I started my next book project. I was like, okay, too close to Rangers, I need to let it go. I'm going to write the prequel to this. What happened to the team of Rangers before Erica was exiled? Like, what went on there? And so I came up with, this was after I had written 375,000 words on this one book, so I had a lot of experience. Actually, I don't have a metric for that. Maybe that's not a lot of experience. But I had some experience, and so I thought, I'm going to write the story of this Ranger Corps before. And so I came up with a concept. We'll get into that in a different video. Wrote it all out, and then I had this just sinking feeling in my gut where I'm like, this is so much better than what I had before. And I'm not saying it's a perfect book or anything, but the difference is night and day. In the plotting, in the characters, in how it's written itself, in the pacing, just everything. Everything was so much better in this new book. And I was like, this is a better jumping off point for the series. I would want to read this. I'd get sucked in. And I would not do that in Rangers, the book I tossed, or the novella. The novella was better than Rangers too, and I did that in 2 days. And so I knew if I wanted to keep it, I had to redo it. And not just redo it in another draft, it would have to be different from the ground up. Characters would have to be different. The plot would have to be different entirely. The pacing would have to be redone. I'd have to change all of the events. So instead of a slice of life, that's all condensed, and we have a more concise, fast-paced story. And nothing's wrong with slow burns. Again, it's just the difference in what I promised versus the payoff that I had. And so I had to cut. I had to cut it. I didn't have a choice. If I wanted to have a high-quality series, which I do. I'm passionate about the series. It came from an awesome campaign that my brother did, and dang it, I want it to be an awesome series to pay that back, because dang, I loved that campaign. And I don't know, I have faith in the series. I have faith in the potential of these books that I can write. It's just, have any of you ever felt like that, where you have this series, you have this vision in your head of something that's so cool, but you know you're not skilled enough to write it yet? And I didn't know what to do, because I'm not going to write a ton unless I'm passionate about it, but I don't want to write what I'm passionate about because I want to be good enough to write that, but I'm never going to be good enough to write that until I get a couple stinkers out of the way. And I mean, ultimately I did it how I did it. I wrote the books, realized that they were stinkers, pushed them to the side, and I'm redoing them from scratch. And I'm able to save, as I do this 7 Rangers book, the prequel, and then the sequel, which is just the remake of this book I've been telling you about, I've been able to save several characters, some plot points, even a couple full chapters. But for the most part, it's a complete overhaul. For example, Ingrid, she's a character that returns in the second book. She is like she's different. She's no longer mute, because I couldn't justify the page time for all the characters learning sign language with the pace that this is happening. So instead I made her brother mute, and she still learns some sign language, or she knows a lot of sign language, and it comes into the story in a little bit, but it's not a main focus, which it was in Rangers of Skyhaven, which, I mean, tells you a little bit about it. If there's a main plot point about the team learning sign language, there's probably a bit too much breathing room if it's a fast-paced action story. Yeah. Another thing that I learned from this is I was making my chapters way too long. They were like 5,000 or 6,000 words, and as I got beta readers, especially as I watched my wife read it, I noticed she would lose steam in chapters. And so I found this concept in StoryGrid. That's a writing podcast and book, editing book. I highly recommend it. But they have this concept called potato chip chapters, where you want them to be just long enough that the reader's like, okay, I like that. I got time for one more. They flip through the pages a little bit. They're like, it's not that long. And then they finish that. Ideally, you have good pacing. And they're like, it's not that long. I can do one more. And so now my chapters are 1,500 to 2,000 words. Each of them are just one scene. And like, that's not for everyone, but I found it makes my pacing way stronger, both because of how it's structured, but also because how I have to structure my mind. I also started outlining all of my scenes, which are my chapters too now. Each of them have an opening image, a setup, an inciting incident, progressive complications, a turning point, a crisis, a climax. What else? Um, a resolution and an ending image. So 9 parts, and I outline that for every single chapter. I also outline where it's going to be, the point of view character, what their goal is, and whether or not they achieve the goal. So I went from not outlining at all to obsessive outlining, and it has helped my writing personally so much. And I didn't think that I was a planner at first, a plotter. I thought I would figure it out as I go. And if you're having trouble, maybe try that, see if that works for you. It worked for me. And yeah, I mean that's the process. That's why I threw out my book. Am I happy that I did it? Yeah, yeah. I mean, it had to be done. I'm glad I got it done with. But I put hundreds of hours into this, literally hundreds, probably 600 or 700, over all my drafts, all my plotting, all my planning. And I was a really slow writer, like hundreds of hours, and it sucks throwing that away. Like it really, truly, I don't like it. I don't like it even a little bit. But it had to be done. If I wanted to have a strong series, I had to get the stinker out of the pot. And I've been saying stinker a whole lot. So yeah, that's the story of why I tossed my first novel between 5 drafts. It ended up at 175,000 words. Tossed a novella too. It just wasn't what I needed. I think it made me a stronger author. I wouldn't have been able to write what I do now if it weren't for those. So I'm happy I wrote them. It sucks that I had to toss them. I'm not saying that's your right move as an author if you have a first product that's not great. But for me, because I wanted it to be a strong point for the series, I needed to have a strong kickoff. That's what I decided to do. And now Seven Rangers, my first book, it's the 5th one I've written, and it's so much better. Like again, I'm not saying it's great or anything, but it's a world's difference. If you want to read the book that I tossed out, I'm going to put it in a link in the description. Not going to do anything with it, so you can read it all you want, do whatever you want with it. It just wasn't working. And like I said, I don't think it's a bad book. It's just not what I needed. It wasn't what I was promising with the plot. So check it out if you want to see what not to do. And yeah, subscribe if you want to see more of these. In my next video, I am talking about something kind of personal to me, which is why it's so hard to write bipolar in books, bipolar disorder. And in fact, in all of media, it's real tough. Anyway, if that interests you, stick around. After that, I'm going to be showing how I outline my books and turn a premise into a plot. But yeah, thanks so much for watching my first video, and I will see you in the next one.